Hi, and welcome to another SEO Hangout with Josh Bachynski. That would be myself. I'm reporting to you live from the Grand Hyatt Hotel in sunny San Diego, California, where I'm just finishing up my 3-week tour of SEO meetings and driving around the California back roads. We're finishing it off with the conference Social Media Marketing World. There's been a lot of good stuff that's come out of this conference, Melissa, my social media expert, will be reporting on that. Hopefully, summing up everything that was interesting and everything that was worth hearing for you next week for free. Yay! Yay, Melissa. So hopefully she'll be doing that for you next week. This week, I wanted to touch on some of the SEO stuff that's going on. So let's get right to it. John Mueller has been having his regular hangouts. He's been saying some crazy stuff. But before I get to that, I just wanted to mention that Bill Slosky from SEO by the Sea, he does a nice job of kind of rounding up and explaining the Google patents that they file. And so he has provided another roundup of ones they provided. That was on I have the URL if you want to see it. It's incomplete Google ranking signals on SEO by the Sea, there's a lot of them. I didn't, not all of them are worth mentioning here, but one of them I thought was interesting, just to give you food for thought in terms of a link building strategy. In fact, it's a very old white hat link building strategy. That Google filed a patent to actually give ranking boosts on sites that are in the top 100 or the top 1,000 that also link to each other. So if you have links, it's good. If you have links if the patent is in effect, because no one knows that the patent is actually in effect, but if the patent is in effect, then if you have links from the top 100 or top 1,000 sites linking to you, that's even better. Those links are counted even more, and those sites are even more trusted. So there's something to think about, and the reason why I mention that is because that's a very old white hat link building tactic. All you do is you do a search for your queries and you see who's ranking there, and you email them and see if you can beg, borrow, or steal a link from them in some way. Okay, now on March 10th, John Mueller had a hangout, and he mentioned some stuff, and Pedro actually even checked in on that, dropped in to give his 2 cents. Now Pedro is an ex-Google employee, and John Mueller is a current Google employee, so it's fairly interesting. And there was some very outlandish and interesting things said, so I'll get right to it. So first off, I asked John Mueller if Google was still committed to transparency. If you saw my last video, you'll know that I had a 20-minute personal meeting with Matt Cutts, because I've been highly critical of Google's moral stance, as my regular listeners will attest. I've ranted once or twice about that, and I've also ranted on Twitter, and I've sent him tweets along the lines of, Matt, you're a complete hypocrite, and you're not half as moral as you like to think you are, and you shouldn't be sleeping half as well at night as you think you do. Along those lines, something like that. So apparently this got under his skin, and so he wanted to actually have a meeting with me. And so we actually went and had a meeting. We sat down for 20 minutes outside of the San Jose Convention Center on the East Terrace. We found where the staff must have their cigarette breaks, and we sat down and had a cigarette break of our own, so to speak. So anyway, coming out of that, I talked about that last video, and I'm probably going to be publishing an article about that experience and kind of what happened. And not only that, some of the things he leaked to me, some of the secrets he leaked to me, not really. I promised him I wouldn't mention too many things, but more my political and moral stance that and that kind of shows where Google's kind of going with their draconian reign of terror with their stuff. So watch out, look for that article. It'll be coming out soon. I'm hoping to get it published somewhere. But anyway, so on that end, however, on the end of Google's dedicated and inspiring commitment to transparency, I asked John Mueller if Google was still committed to transparency, and if they released a version of Penguin, would they definitely tell us? because there's a lot of changes in the SERPs, and so we need to know which one is Penguin. So we need to know, when we need to disavow and delete links and stuff like that. You do not, I repeat, you do not want to go disavowing and deleting links unless there has been a Penguin that has been announced, or you've got a manual link penalty. There is no other reason to disavow or delete links. Doing so will shoot yourself in the foot. Links are the things that prop up your site like a Jenga. When you start pulling pieces out, you are going to fall down. So do not go disavowing or deleting your links unless they've announced Penguin or a manual penalty, and unless the manual penalty is versus the site. If the manual penalty is versus the links, they've already selected the links that they think are suspect. You do not need to take good links and throw them onto the disavow fire. Sorry if I sounded a bit annoyed with that. As my regular listeners will attest, I've had rants about that too, because I get really annoyed when good people get bad SEO advice or get scared because of Google's fear-mongering and shoot themselves in the foot, because you will shoot yourself in the foot. Okay, anyway, so getting to what John Mueller said, I asked him if he was still committed to if Google was still committed to transparency and if they would announce Penguin. And he said to me the very interesting and completely ridiculous statement, and this is, I'm paraphrasing, but this is almost exactly what he said. It's on March 10th. You can watch it yourself. Get a beer. It's good for a laugh. He said, we are committed to transparency and we want to increase it, but we can't promise we will announce anything, and we can't promise that we will tell you anything, and we can't promise that we will do anything. So they're committed to transparency, but they're not committed to being transparent at all in any way, shape, or form. It's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard Google in general and John Mueller say. I'm sorry, it was completely contradictory and made absolutely no sense whatsoever. So go watch it and tweet it and make a big deal about it, because it was ridiculous, and it is. And when I say it was ridiculous, I mean quite literally, it is worthy of ridicule. So ridicule away. Further, he said that they might announce Penguin when Penguin is released, but they probably won't. So there's no guarantee they will tell you anything, much less when Penguin is released. So this I found scary. This I found immoral. This I found hypocritical, completely and utterly hypocritical. It makes it very tough for webmasters to know when they're hit by an algorithm. Quite frankly, the only way you can know if you're hit by Penguin or Panda, really the best way to know, is check your analytics and see when the drops were and correlate that with ranking drop dates. If you want a great tool to do that, it's called Penguin, Panguin. Use Penguin. It's a tool from Barracuda. And they'll overlay the dates of Panda and Penguin as reported by SEO mods. And you have to give them access to your analytics data, but if you do, then you can see when your hits were, and that's the first tool I use to see what sites were hit by. But if they don't announce if they don't announce that Penguin has run, then SEO mods can only put speculation. Even if they bother to put speculation, they don't always update their ranking algorithm either. Rand, you should update it. People are relying on you. So that was just utterly ridiculous. Okay, moving on. So they still definitely need text. Somebody asked if images are good enough, or you could just have videos on your site. You can, but Google is still a text-based, text-biased search engine. So make sure you have text on your pages. Make sure you have your keywords listed a couple times on page. It's pretty much the only safe place to have them. You still should have them on the page. But, obviously you have to read the text yourself, and it shouldn't sound jilted or stuttering or repetitive. You only need to mention your keywords once in an H1, once in your titles, and 2 or 3 times in a 500-word text. Even that is pushing it. That's actually getting a little excessive, maybe once or twice. Google is very good at knowing what the page is about. If you have any questions as to whether Google knows what your page is about, go to Google's AdWords keyword planner and paste in your URL to get their suggestions of what that page would be appropriate for in terms of PPC. And that also will double for telling you what Google thinks the page is about and what queries it should rank for. should you ever have the authority and the quality and the user experience signals. Okay. There was an interesting trick that Pedro used. He checked Google's cached version of a garbage text page, and he saw long, and I quote, long links of random text, and he thought this was a quality problem for Panda. So I just want to mention this because it was a neat trick. He's an ex-Google employee, and so he kind of he didn't say this was a neat trick, he just did it, and I was like, oh, that's a neat trick, and so I thought I'd write it down. So if you want to know really what Google thinks about your page, you can fetch his Googlebot in Webmaster Tools, but another way you can do is just do a site colon query for your site, so site colon redapples.com, and look at the cached version of the page and see if anything weird shows up. That could be a Panda factor, especially if there's garbage text in the page or garbage text in the URL. A long kind of crappy string with like 40 weird characters. That could be seen as a low quality signal. It could be confusing for their algorithms to figure out what you're about. Okay, also somebody asked about the disavow file. They trust all the disavow files and take them as gospel. So I asked, webmasters, like I said, are freaking out. I didn't say this in the question, but because of Google's campaign of fear. And they're disavowing, they're shooting themselves in the foot, and they're just throwing links willy-nilly into disavow file because they're worried, like hypochondriacs worried at a little bump on their skin as a cancer tumor, and they start cutting with a scalpel. It's not a good idea. Sorry for the graphic example, but it's not a good idea. And so I asked, do they have any logic built in to ignore when webmasters put in silly files in the disavow file? And he said no. He said there's no logic built in, and the disavow file doesn't work on anything. And so he's mentioned the disavow file a bunch of times now. He's mentioned it enough that I can make some pretty strong statements about how it works. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. The disavow file is only, and this has been leaked from other people at Google and whatnot, the disavow file was only a mechanism for them to accept files for the manual web spam team when doing a reconsideration request. It doesn't necessarily do anything else. Now, Matt Cutts, because I prompted him on Twitter, and you can check, and he actually responded to me on Twitter because I poked at him. That's one of the reasons why he knows, because I have a PhD in ethics as well. He takes my ethical comments seriously. And so I poked at him on Twitter one time, and I asked if they're really using the disavow file, and he said because there was a rumor that came out from Google from someone equal to Google, Matt Cutts or higher. He said, yeah, the disavow file doesn't do anything. Never mind about it. And he said, no, the disavow file will help with Penguin, is what he said. So, but I've come to realize what that means, and because John Mueller has admitted that the disavow file will only help with Penguin if the engineers remember and have the wherewithal and the authority and care to push that data into the algorithm, or vis-a-vis make the Penguin algorithm do an if disavow, then ignore that link, keep going, right? So the engineers have to remember to use that data. Otherwise, it's just a repository sitting there that typically the manual web spam team accesses just to see if you've disavowed all the links that they think are suspect after they've nabbed you for a manual action versus the site. And also for their machine learning, I'm sure they're using to determine what are good links or bad links. But they're not using it on any, according to John Mueller and according to what they're talking about, they're not using it on a regular basis. This is another reason why there's no point of you just throwing your links in there unless you're worried you're going to get hit by Penguin or you're going to get a manual action, in which case you've got to have a pretty bad link profile. So for the run-of-the-mill white hat people who've never done anything bad and haven't been attacked by a really bad negative SEO campaign, there's no need to use it either. It's like taking insulin because you were slightly hypo or hyperglycemic. Like, it makes no sense. Only diabetics should be doing that. Like, it makes no sense at all for you to go playing around with the disavow file. It's like going into your registry in Windows back in the day and just starting to edit entries. It will completely screw up your whole system. And my point is that I asked John Mueller, Do they have any logic built in to ignore when webmasters go in there and just start banging on it like monkeys with typewriters? And he said no. He said there's no logic built in. They trust all disavow files. If you upload it and they read it, they will disavow that file when and if they decide to take account of that in an algorithm. And they're not going to build any logic into that aspect of it or portion of it, he said. He said they might contact the webmaster if he did something dumb. I don't know what that means. Clearly, it means about the manual process. They might email you and say, "Hey, in your reconsideration request," he said they might say, "Oh, you disavowed all your links. You don't have to disavow all your links. You don't have to disavow the bad ones, like this one and this one and this one." Because they'll send you examples. So yeah, he said so basically that's the way the disavow file works. And they have to, and I quote, push that data to the algorithm in question. They also have to recrawl them. They do this on recrawl. So yeah, so don't, it's not this like magic pill that's going to make all your ranking problems go away, which may not have anything to do with links in the first place. So make sure you get an SEO who knows how to diagnose these Panda and Penguin penalties. There's not a lot of us out there. Quite frankly, this is going to sound self-serving, but I'm the only one that I trust to do it. I've talked with other people. I've seen what they do. I've seen the reports they produce, and they are utter garbage and crap. So I'm sorry. That's my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. I do this for a living, so clearly this is going to be some self-promotion going on here, but really, to tell you the truth, fine, don't hire me. Go try and find somebody else, but I honestly cannot recommend anybody else. By the way, if you have any SEO questions, moving on, a nice little tangent there. If you have any SEO questions, you can always email me. I'm always willing to answer quickie little SEO questions for free. Not a 3-paragraph email or not a 2-page email, but a quick little SEO question I'll answer for free. Or if you need more help than that, I'm always here to provide it. You can email me at joshbachynski@gmail.com. Follow me at Twitter at joshbachynski, and you can watch more videos like this where I leak tons of crazy SEO leaks and information that I've got from my insider contacts and from doing SEO experiments, which I've got another one coming up pretty soon, which is pretty cool. At youtube.com/jbachins. That's JBACHYNS. Also, Melissa, my social media expert, will be providing more really good tips on how to actually get traffic from social and how to do it super cheap and super easy. So, finally making social the gold mine it's supposed to be, and not just, the playground just for like Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 companies to do their Bernatian branding on. You can actually start making money. A small mom and pop, a small business, even a mid-sized business can actually start getting traffic from social legitimately with minimum effort and maximal gain. And she's going to be sharing those tips and those secrets pretty soon. Okay, let's see what else I had in my big list here. Just a general reminder. You don't always have to go for the head terms. Head terms in SEO are the big ranking queries, like buy skincare, or best skin cream. Those are the big head terms, usually one word or 2 words, and that's where you get the most traffic. And sometimes you have really good buying intent there, or semi-good buying intent, but often you don't. Quite often, and the generic queries have more competition. There's more sites vying for those positions. And this is an oldie but a goodie. I mean, anyone who's been in SEO for a long time will know what I'm talking about when you go for the low-hanging fruit. And John Mueller wanted to remind us in this hangout that often, if you go for the specific buying intent queries, longer tail queries, like getting more specific, like they've already done their research, because if the sales funnel, they're up here doing research and they're drilling down to, the skin cream is lifestyle. Oh, well, what's listed? Oh, well, I want to buy a lifestyle. You want to go down here where the buying intent is already there. Sure, some people on the funnel have sucked out purchases here and some more here, but it's easier to rank often it can be easier to rank for some of the more specific buying intent queries. Of course, it depends on the niche. They could just be competitive, and people have already, because it's so competitive, people have jammed themselves into the top and jammed in the middle and jammed themselves to the bottom. It's just jam-packed. This sales funnel just jam-packed with people trying to sell to you. But just as a reminder, you have less competition with a more specific query, a long-tail query, and you have more buying intent. So you get a lot more bang for your buck. So don't always think you have to rank your index page for the big head term. And don't try and jam like 3 head terms in your title and think your index page is going to rank for that anymore. It just doesn't work that way anymore. You need a page focused on a search query, and the bottom pages on your site, the sub pages, are usually what's going to rank for that, because Google is very adamantly trying to make sure that they remove every step that is possible. So if you have a thin affiliate site that adds no value, they're just going to remove you out of the equation, and they are tracking click-throughs now. I do have some proof for this coming up, maybe not this hangout, but another hangout. So they are tracking click-throughs. We don't know exactly how, through the Chrome browser, through Android, through their ISP data, through their DNS data. We're not really sure, but they are tracking click-throughs and where you end up. John Mueller's admitted it now almost verbatim. If you have an ad site and a made for AdSense site, they just click through, they're going to remove your site out of the equation and make the other site rank for that query. If you have a thin affiliate site and they're just clicking through and they can track that, they're going to remove you out of the equation. They're just going to put the other one there. So if you're having trouble with that, email me and I can take a look and tell you if I think you're going to have trouble with that or if that's part of the Panda algorithm, looking for quality. And those kind of thin sites, they don't find its quality at all. Okay, so what about links? What about anchor text? Do we still need exact match anchor text? The answer is yes. You still need it a little bit, but you don't want to go over 10% for exact match anchor text or search phrase anchor text. And it still helps them as a vote that you're about topic XYZ, and it still shows relevancy, as they call it. And you can do that both with no follow links and follow links. So what I like to do is I like to try and throw the relevancy and the exact match anchor text in with no follow links, because although they have no power, they will train Google's algos telling it that you are about topic XYZ. Now, they should already know you're about topic XYZ, because keyword XYZ should be on your on page, and you should check with the keyword planner, like I said, to see if the keyword planner knows you're about that topic. But if you have that and another site has that, then they'll rank higher than you if they have links that say they're about that as well. The risk is obviously throwing do follow links at yourself with the exact match anchor text is getting highly dangerous. Just recently, a site got a manual penalty just for having one link on it that had a search phrase based exact match anchor on it. Just one. Danny Sullivan wrote a huge article about that, critiquing Google. Matt Cutts responded immediately. Things are heating up, folks. The moral war is getting stronger and stronger. Danny Sullivan was using, who is not a Google sympathizer by any means, but he walks a very fine line that if he wants to get Matt Cutts and Amit Singhal to his conferences to speak, he's got to be nice to them, right? And he can't embarrass them too much. And so he's good. He's really good with the way he phrases his questions. If you've ever been to these conferences, or you'll notice. But he was point blank, essentially accusing Google in this article he just wrote. I think I sent him my article, and I think it might have inspired him to write something. Hog the spotlight. To write something. But that's okay. My article is way better than his, and I'll blow his out of the way. So yeah, so the question is, so how do we get these relevant links? Well, I wouldn't go over 10% of your total backlink profile with your white hat, black hat, gray hat, polka dot hat, pink hat. It doesn't matter what color your hat is. Google doesn't care. They're still going to give you a manual action if you have too many search phrase anchor text. And Penguin, that's exactly what Penguin looks for, especially if you have exact match anchor text that matches with your exact match domain or something along those lines on spammy blogs or low quality blogs or untrusted Panda hit blogs. Well, that's how Penguin seems to be working these days, although they're making huge changes to it, as Matt Cutts told me in our private talk. So to deal with negative SEO, which is a positive thing, so I don't imagine that he would care that I mention it. So yeah, so the question is, you just don't. Like, I just get no follow links because it's safer. If I have to go that route, I just make the page about topic XYZ, and it'll usually rank for it. And if it doesn't, then I'll get no follow links to remind Google that I'm about topic XYZ. And then after that, I will, in a completely white hat way, um, earn links with the exact match anchor text. Um, uh, but it can only be at 10%. Usually it has to have natural stop words like great site for red apples, great site to buy red apples, my favorite site to buy red apples. If buy red apples is the exact match anchor text, and then a lot of that's only 10%, and then the rest is like partial match, like 40% partial match, and like after that, the 50% after that would be like great site, just the natural stop words, and the partial match would be like great site to buy red, or my favorite site to buy them apples, so that's partial match. So red and apples wouldn't be, buy red apples wouldn't be together. These are still ranking the best. Ben Fishkin just put out a study. These are still ranking the best. You still need those kinds of things. We're in a stupid gray area where they don't trust social enough, and there's too much spam on Twitter for them to use it as a ranking signal, and they refuse, quote unquote. Matt Cutts refuses. He said in his talk to me to clean up their index for them. He said. So whether or not they're ever going to use Twitter, I don't know. He could have been lying to me, but he seemed pretty adamant. He seemed pretty annoyed. But they might not have a choice because we're in the stupid gray area where they still have to rely on links because their whole algorithm is based on the PageRank algorithm. But and as he said in that video, which was actually filmed last year, by the way, it was filmed in 2013. All the ones with Fez in the corner, they're all filmed last year, so they're all slightly outdated information, by the way. They still have to use links, he said in that video, but because their search was terrible without it. And so unless they go and do the expense, and it's a huge political issue too, because Twitter, remember they had a Twitter and Google had a deal 2 or 3 years ago that Twitter was going to be their big social pipe, their new signal for all the fresh new data, and they had a direct pipe into Twitter, but they couldn't come to terms on the deal when it came up for contract renewal, and so the whole thing fell through, and they vowed never again, Danny Sullivan told me, they vowed never again to rely on a third-party tool for their own ranking information. Barry or Danny, one of the other told me. So, yeah, so they might have to bite the bullet and actually make an algorithm surreptitiously to read Twitter, because they just don't have the demographic base. They don't have access to Facebook because Zuckerberg is a nut bar. They can't get access to that. They do have back-end access, and they have been using it to test things. I know this. I'm not going to tell you how I know this, but they can't use it. They can't rely on it, right? And it would be foolish for them to rely on it. They want to be able to rely on only their own stuff and have only their own stuff to rely on. So unless they bite the bullet and actually track social signals greater, they still have to rely on links. So we're still in this stupid kind of gray area where we have to get links. It's super hard to get links. It's even super harder to get white hat links. Social signals do seem to rank you and do seem to have kind of a boost and a benefit, but there's not a high enough demographic on Google Plus for it to roll out full and for everyone to be able to rely on it. So it's difficult. It's tough. They are getting a lot of signals from a lot of different social networks, and they do have a back-end deal with a lot of different social networks. And we have been ranking sites on kind of a broad approach of doing social on 4 different networks and doing quality links and nothing black hat and basically user experience, having the best user experience on your site, the fastest, prettiest design, sexiest, that gets them the information, it's above the fold, super fast, exactly what they want, so they don't get bored and click or go somewhere else. Because everyone is sucking on that so bad right now, because web designers have never really actually had to know how to make a proper user interface for years. Because everyone is sucking on that so bad, you can rank a site just by doing it right now, in terms of user experience. And we know for a fact that they're tracking that and using that directly. And that they could just say, screw links. They could say, forget that, forget links, forget social. We're just going to track everything on user experience and traffic and trending traffic, and to see what people do on it. If people like it, then it'll rank good, which would be great, fine, because I can make good websites all day long. I know exactly how to do that. You can rank sites just on that. So they might go that way totally, but right now they're using a broad spectrum of signals. So anyway, yeah. So we're still in this unfortunate gray area. We still have to get links. Just make sure you do it safely. And don't forget, you can get relevancy through no follow links, although they have no juice. But if Google didn't realize your page was about XYZ, you suddenly send 10,000 no follow links that say it's about XYZ, then it'll start ranking it for XYZ. So it looked like you got a boost. It's just because Google didn't realize you were already about topic XYZ. And then getting the do follow links, you have to make sure you do that safely, and it's got to look donated. It's got to look perfectly natural. It's got to come from a website that doesn't look like they're selling links, and preferably doesn't sell links. Preferably it's an age legitimate blog. But I don't care about that, and they shouldn't care about that, and they're not the moral police, quite frankly. So I'm going to phrase it the way I want. It shouldn't look, whether it's white hat or not, whether you pay for the link or not, does not matter. It can't look like it sells links, because like this site had one link that had a search phrase anchor text that looked like it was a paid anchor text, and they got a penalty. So Google is going on a crazy rampage. Okay. So that's my half hour. That's my SEO rant and the information that I had for you there. Last point I'm going to make, so I can just round out this hangout, is again, John Mueller was asked, and Miley OE and John Mueller has both admitted that a lot of the data that's in Webmaster Tools, and in analytics for that matter, is the data they're using for ranking. So those two free tools are super important. No, I don't think they use that data to validate their terms and services. No, I don't think the search ranking team has access to that data. It's a totally different company. It's a totally different section of Google, which runs like a totally different company. But they would want to give that information to webmasters to use. So I could be wrong there, but it would validate their terms of service, I think, if you read the terms and conditions for those two apps. And he did admit point blank that Webmaster Tools does bubble up the data that they do use for ranking. And he said specifically this is what they use for ranking: the index status reports, the links, the crawl errors, the geo-targeting, which can have a very strong effect. All webmasters need to check that your geo-targeting is set properly. If you want to rank for the United States and it's general, you should set to the United States. If you want to rank for the United States and it's set to France, well, then you need to set it for the United States, right? And the preferred domain can have a huge effect. And as I said at SMX West a couple weeks ago, Miley OE told me point blank they use click-through rate for ranking. So if you have a crappy click-through rate like 0% or 1% or worse than everybody else, that's going to derank you. They're going to say, why is no one clicking on that? No one likes it. Get rid of it and replace you with something else on page one. The SERP bounce. So if they click and go to your page and they go back, that's from you can find that from drop-offs and analytics in the visitors flow. Don't use the analytics bounce rate. It's not accurate. You have to use the visitors flow drop-offs you have to select the specific Google organic data and see who drop offs. Those are the SERP bounces you have to worry about. And the internal bounce rate. Now they've confirmed they use the internal bounce rate, because if people are clicking right through to something else or not finding what they want and go back to Google, John Mueller's mentioned, and do another search. I have a bunch of my German spies listening to all the German hangouts now, and they have confirmed that John Mueller admitted in German to his buddies in German, so I knew he would drop a little bit more information, that they do care and they can track when people go back in the same web session. So they can close the tab, but the browser's still open. They still have the cookies all set. They can tell that they were dissatisfied when they searched for red apples, and then they searched for best red apples or something like that. So the sites that do not serve the queries get hit either that's a factor in Panda or triggered for a Panda check. We're not entirely sure how that works yet, but we do know that they come up on the scale for Panda. Okay, so a lot of information and a lot of little tidbits are flinking in. We're starting to be able to build up really good SEO pyramid theories of what's going on. Oh, which reminds me, I wanted to mention, when you're doing your internal page rank, when you're doing your internal linking, I just wanted to mention, don't forget that, again, you can't rank your index page, like it's 1998, but your subpages are what's going to rank because they're on the topic XYZ or ABC or what they're supposed to be about. But you have to tailor your internal page rank to make sure that Google knows those are your most important pages, aka PageRank Sculpt, which one side of Google will tell you is bad, and the other side of Google will tell you specifically to do. I won't mention who. but it's not a secret. Like they publicly say, this is the proper way to do your linking. So make sure that if you have a sub page, it's important that you have a sidebar saying, like if I had a site selling red apples, I would, on every page on the right hand side in the sidebar, I'd have like, take a look at our best red apples for 2014, and that would go to the red apples page. So every page on my site links to that page, so Google knows it's a very important page as far as my site's concerned. So all the pages kind of link up to the category pages and the index, but all the pages link to the red apples page because that's the one I want to rank anyway because it's tailored for buy red apples, and so that's how it should rank. So anyway, that's the SEO hangout for today. Next week I'm back in Canada. I'm back in my office. Hopefully Biff the Search Terminator hasn't totally totaled the office and smashed the place, or that stupid naked cat that runs around and meows his head off. His name is Matt Cutts. Hopefully Matt Cutts didn't muck everything up. Matt. And as I said, hopefully Melissa will have a really good recap of all the really interesting social secrets that are coming out. The secrets of the gurus who like do this stuff for like Coca-Cola and huge companies and stuff. They're coming out with really good information to make social. We've already provided a lot of really good information on how to make social its own traffic source. Go back and look at our videos, and we'll be providing more information on that. So thanks very much for listening, and I hope you guys have a good weekend and good luck in the search.